As Unitarian Universalists, we have a deep heritage of imperfect prophets. Joseph Priestley was a prophet of his time, and he owned people. John Murray was one of the first Universalist preachers to land on these shores, and he had some ideas that were certainly appropriate to his time. Our ancestors would no doubt shake their collective heads in wonder, or perhaps horror, at the world of Unitarian Universalism today. Our ancestors, we must remember, included Arius, one of the early Christian heretics in the 4th century. Undoubtedly, he would shake his head at how we have diverged from his ancient version of Christianity. Calvin, of course, would have had a fit, and Martin Luther before him. They'd be utterly horrified by the progressive nature of our theology, that hell is not a place, that God is loving, that we understand humanity to be inherently worthy of respect and love and salvation. All of these brave heretics would view our current understanding of Unitarian Universalism as the work of something utterly unholy, to be sure. But that is what happens when brave people take gradual, even tiny steps into the emerging future. Arius defied the notion of a God in multiple persons. Martin Luther challenged the authority of the church. Calvin challenged the authority of Martin Luther. Servetus challenged the authority of Calvin. That didn't work out so well. But such is often the way in revolutionary movements. Our reading today by Adrienne Marie Brown captures some of what I'm thinking about. We are beyond the wildest imaginations of our ancestors in all the ways, in ways that would have made them immeasurably proud, and in ways that would make them spin in their graves. Progress over centuries and millennia is like that. Humanity grows as our learning and knowledge expands. Augustinian monk Gregor Mendel was the first to explore hereditary genetics and documented patterns that indicated that some genes were dominant and others recessive. Around the same time, Englishman Charles Darwin was documenting how living things changed in adaptation to their environments. Now, the works of both men were resisted mightily by people in their time, although Mendel caught less grief because he was a monk. But people could not imagine that the world was not run by a higher power, and could not merely be cosmic chaos theory that makes things happen. We are beyond the wildest dreams of our ancestors, and we are well beyond their most terrifying nightmares. I thought about this reading yesterday when I was at Pride in Bloomsburg, and I was having a conversation with Reverend Steve Hummel, who's of the Trinity Reformed United Church of Christ in Bloomsburg. And we shared, as often happens when ministers get together who have never met, so how did you get into this ministry gig? And as you know, I was raised in an Irish Catholic community not far from Boston. It was, and to some degree remains, a significant cultural structure of connections and relations and faith. In conversation yesterday, I wondered aloud what my grandmother might have thought of my current life. I wonder if my politics, my gender, my sexuality, or the fact that I'm a Protestant minister would horrify her more than the other. Certainly, there is not much about who I am that would be familiar to Dorothy Fortune Nee Hanley, first-generation Irish-American and faithful parishioner of the Immaculate Conception Parish in Newburyport, Massachusetts. But it is not as though I sprung forth straight out of childhood as the radical person that I am today. It took a lot of little steps of bravery and vulnerability to get here. First, I had to escape the dysfunction of my immediate family. That took guts and tears and fear. Then I had to get sober, which was also no small job. Then I had to do some transformational spiritual work, and again, that is not easy. And I began to examine my truth and weigh whether the cost was greater to risk rejection or violence when I came out, or the cost was greater to live dishonestly in a closeted bubble of toxic safety. As life went on, I learned more about myself, and each time I was faced with the same choice: live openly and risk rejection, abuse, perhaps violence, or to live under the radar, closeted, pretending to be something I am not. Sometimes I think I got more shocked reactions to becoming a minister than I did when I came out as queer or transgender. And if I want to be honest, I've lost and gained people and support at every one of these steps along the way. There are dreams and there are nightmares, and I think we all occupy some portion of each realm. Now, I chose today's story for all ages because I've been thinking a lot lately about bravery and safety and service. I love Piglet. Piglet's my favorite. Winnie the Pooh is sweet but dim. Owl is smart but insecure and neurotic. Kanga is just a really busy parent. Tigger is fun but shallow. Piglet, however, is the most complex, nuanced character in the Christopher Robin stories. He is small and often afraid. He rarely feels like he is in control of the world in which he lives. He has a hard time keeping up with others because, frankly, his legs are short and he is tiny. He got frightened senseless by Winnie the Pooh, who had a honey jar stuck on his head. People don't seem to expect a lot from Piglet, and neither does he. And yet, this story is where Piglet shines. To be fair, Piglet does not want to be helpful. Piglet would rather have help come to them. He would not like to be tied to a string and would not like to be hoisted to the ceiling. He would not like to be stuffed through the letter slot, and he would not like to go rescue anybody. He would rather be rescued, thank you. And yet, he's the only one who can do it. Pooh is too round and too heavy to be lifted up to the letterbox and would certainly not fit through. Owl is also too large, and even though he can fly, he wouldn't squish very well through the letterbox. So only Piglet can do it. And so he does. He does it, a little bit for the hope that there might be a song about him. But mostly he does it because he doesn't seem to have a choice, right? It's his turn. Something needs to be done, and he's the one that's got the stuff, got the qualities that are necessary. My favorite part is when Piglet gets through the letter slot, takes stock of the situation outside, and he leans back in the letterbox and shouts, "It's all right. Your tree has blown right over, and there's a branch across the door. But Christopher Robin and I can move it, and we'll bring a rope to get Pooh out of there. And I'll go tell him now. I can climb down quite easily. I mean, it's dangerous, but I can do it all right. And Christopher Robin and I will be back in about a half hour. And without waiting for anybody's affirmation or approval, he runs off and saves the day. This is one of those transformative moments like we see in the final conflict in The Wizard of Oz. The scarecrow who believes he has no brain devises a plan. The cowardly lion steps up to do the brave thing and protect those who need protecting. And the Tin Man who lacks a heart brings it all together with a beautiful expression of love. I know I have a heart because I can feel it breaking. This is that moment for Piglet. He does the thing that is both beyond his wildest imagination and beyond his scariest nightmare. And he manages. I can climb down quite easily. I mean, it's dangerous, but I can do it. I'll be back in a half hour. And then he runs off and does what needs doing, without needing assurance, without instructions, without being told what to do. He comes into his own in that moment. The lowly little pink piglet with the big sensitive ears that get cold and quiver when he's scared, he gets brave and does what needs doing. Now, being brave, I need to mention, is not about being unafraid. Being unafraid is quite often a terrible plan. Being afraid is a very natural and life-saving response to terrifying situations. It is what allowed us to survive and not be eaten by saber-toothed tigers, right? We learned to be afraid of the sharp things and we avoided them. Therefore, we're here. It's a really long story made really short. But being brave is also what brings people to pride events, like yesterday. Is there a risk of social backlash for attending a pride event? Yeah. Are the drag queens at risk of violence for performing? Or the one who read stories to the children? It was the most adorable thing ever. And yet people show up and do the right thing. We fly our rainbow flags out front because it is the right thing to do. Are we at risk for taking the stances we do on social justice issues? Yes, to a degree. And yet this is what we are called to do. Can we keep ourselves safe? I would say that's a yes and. The 21st century, what passes as safety and security is a little bit different than what we have previously understood that to be. We live in a culture that celebrates anti-intellectualism, it celebrates violence and bullying. We live in a world where there are some who shamelessly take pleasure in others' pain and who are sometimes willing to inflict that pain for amusement. So what do we do? It's scary stuff being a beacon for progressive religious values in a community that does not celebrate those ideas. We do what Piglet did. We take a deep breath, we cross our fingers, and we do what needs doing. We take all the precautions we can without compromising who we are, but eventually we need to be the ones who do the right thing and make a way for those who need rescuing. Sometimes those who need rescuing are us, our family, our friends, our children. Heroes are imperfect because they're human. Heroic works are generally imperfect as well because they are, well, organized and handled by humans. None of us is going to get everything right all the time. The trick is to keep trying. Our faith calls us each day to offer prophetic witness about what the world can be, to describe a world beyond our ancestors' wildest dreams, We must remember that those dreams may be others' nightmares. And like Piglet, our job is to keep going forward, doing the things that only we can do, and being brave when we are scared. Being scared is okay. Surpassing our ancestors' dreams can be scary stuff. But allowing our fear to paralyze us into inaction is our, or would be our, own worst nightmare. The world is big and scary. Together, we can be brave and make it better for those who come after us. May our bravery and our prophetic witness be our practice and our prayer today and always. Amen.